Waiting for others to change or for some kind of shift to take place in the world to restore you to balance won't work without your commitment to take responsibility for changing your way of thinking. If that's left to others, you'll turn the controls of your life over to someone or something outside of you, and that's a prescription for disaster. You must vow, from this moment forward, to see yourself exclusively in loving terms, and to invite love to accompany you 24/7. Here's an affirmation to help keep you on this path. Holy Spirit, guide me now. This simple, powerful statement aligns you with love. Self-contempt or self-rejection cannot distort your balance. You only have love to give away. When you give contempt or rejection to yourself or others, you're a vibrational match to these energies, and they'll continue to appear in your life. Many people blame others or an unloving, uncaring world for the lack of love they're receiving in comparison to what they desire. Any disparity that exists between the love you desire and what you actually receive is a mirror image, a reflection of what you're thinking. Give away hate and you receive hate. Give away love and it has to come streaming into your life. Imagine a container the size of your heart. This container is the sole source of all thoughts. Whenever you think something, you must go to this container, select a thought, and send it out into the world. Using this metaphor, the real issue isn't about simply selecting positive, loving thoughts and having your world shift back into balance. The real issue is what's in the container. That is, what's in the heart reservoir you have inside of you to give to others. This container within is connected to an endless supply of love. You need only turn your thoughts to that source to be filled with love. Love for yourself, love for the world, love for life, love for all others, and most significantly, love for your source of being. Then this is all that you'll have available to give away, and consequently, all that returns to you. It's been said that the difference between all of us living at ordinary levels of human consciousness and those we call saints is that they never forget God even for a single moment. They're cheerful when life is difficult, patient when others are impatient, and loving when others respond with hatred. Why? Because of that container. Ordinary people have a container out of which they pluck loving thoughts in certain circumstances. The saint has an internal vessel that contains nothing else out of which and into which love flows freely. So rather than working on simply changing your thoughts in order to become more peaceful and loving, why not shoot for the moon and think like the saint that you are? Focus on that container within. When you continually say, Holy Spirit, guide me now, you'll see your container overflowing with so many loving thoughts that it's impossible for negativity in any form to alter the balance within. What love looks like through the eyes of a child. Here are some jewels describing what love is from the perspective of a group of 4 to 8-year-olds. As you work to reset the love balance beam of your life, consider these refreshing thoughts on what love is. 1. When someone loves you, the way they say your name is different. You just know your name is safe in their mouth. 2. Love is when you go out to eat and give somebody most of your French fries without making them give you any of theirs. 3. Love is when my daddy makes coffee for my mommy and he takes a sip before giving it to her to make sure the taste is okay. 4. Love is when mommy gives daddy the best piece of chicken. 5. During my piano recital, I was on stage and I was scared. I looked at all the people watching me and saw my daddy waving and smiling. He was the only one. I wasn't scared anymore. And my favorite. Love is what's in the room with you at Christmas if you stop opening presents and listen. There you have it. Look within and around. Listen. Love is what's left over when falling in love fades away, because love is an endless source. Give it away. Share your French fries. Give someone the best piece of chicken. Wave and smile to the universe, and you'll soon know what Victor Hugo meant when he observed, love is the reduction of the universe to a single being. Not only is love what's left over when falling in love fades away, but love defines the source from which we came. Elizabeth Barrett Browning poetically describes the end of life as a return to pure love. She says it this way, "Guess now who holds thee? Death, I said, but there the silver answer rang, not death, but love." And so it seems that love is truly all that's left over.
You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. There is a sacred truth that waits patiently for you to hear it, beneath the noise of memory, beneath the noise of pain, beneath the clutter of old stories you've told yourself again and again until they've shaped your entire identity. And that sacred truth is this: the past is not who you are. It is only who you were convinced to believe you are. We live in a world that has taught us to tether our sense of self to timelines. This is who I am, we say, pointing backward to a broken childhood, to a betrayal, to the years we were unseen, unloved, misunderstood. But there is no freedom in chaining yourself to a story that no longer serves the evolution of your soul. The past is like a wake behind a boat, shows where you've been, but it cannot steer you forward. It has no power unless you reach back, pick it up, and place it over your face like a mask. So many souls walk this earth in suffering, not because of what happened, but because they won't let what happened stop happening. They replay it, rehearse it, reaffirm it, until it becomes a costume they wear so tightly they forget they were ever anything else. But hear me, there is something within you that was never hurt, never abandoned, never unloved, never broken, and that part of you, that divine eternal presence, is your truest identity. You are not the frightened child. You are not the failed relationship. You are not the financial loss, the addiction, the mistake, or the moment of collapse. You are not your trauma. You are not your depression. You are not the echo of someone else's inability to love you. You are the soul who survived, the breath that kept going, the consciousness that chose to keep waking up every morning, even in the dark. You are the observer of all those moments, not the moments themselves. But here's what the ego does: it tries to build a kingdom out of memory. It clings to identity because identity feels safe. Even if that identity is steeped in pain, it is still familiar. And the ego would rather have a predictable prison than an open, unknown sky. To stop using the past as your identity, you must first recognize that it was only ever a teacher, not a sculptor. It shaped moments, yes, but it was never meant to define your essence. Pain shows up in your life as a mirror, as a message, as a master, but it does not have to become your home. Imagine walking through a forest and tripping over a rock. You fall, scrape your knee, and it hurts. Do you stay on the ground for the rest of your life pointing to the stone? Do you carry that stone in your pocket forever, telling every person you meet, this rock is who I am? Or do you learn where it lay, stand up, dust yourself off, and walk on with greater awareness? When you identify with your past, you are trying to live life looking in the rearview mirror. And the soul does not move backward. The soul is always now, always forward, always present. The soul cannot even see the past unless the mind drags it there. Every time you say, this happened to me, ask yourself, but is it happening now? Most often, the answer is no. What's happening now is peace. What's happening now is silence. What's happening now is the beating of your heart and the rise and fall of your breath. What's happening now is life a new canvas, but your thoughts may still be coloring it with the old brushstrokes of yesterday. Let me remind you of something sacred. You were born whole. You came into this world not as a product of pain, but as a vessel of light. And though the world may have tried to convince you otherwise, though it may have tried to rename you with its labels and limitations, it cannot touch your essence. Not truly. Your soul is untouched by suffering. It simply witnesses. It simply learns. It simply evolves. You have the power right now to return to that essence. Not by erasing the past, but by releasing it. Not by forgetting what happened, but by refusing to allow it to narrate your present. You are the author now. You hold the pen. The chapter has ended. Why are you still rereading it when the page is blank and the ink is still wet? Forgiveness is not about saying what happened was okay. It's about saying what happened no longer owns me. It's not about them. It's about your liberation. It's about untying yourself from the anchor that's kept your soul from rising. And if you think you need closure before you move forward, let me tell you something gently, but clearly, closure is not something you get from the past. Closure is what you give yourself by no longer needing anything from it. The moment you stop waiting for an apology, for understanding, for justice, for healing from the one who hurt you, that is the moment you become free. The past is not a prophecy. It is not a verdict. It is not a prison. It is a place you passed through. And the only reason it continues to feel real is because you revisit it so often that you forget to see where you are now. Think of it like this. You are standing in a beautiful field, flowers blooming, sky open, birds singing, and yet you keep looking down at an old photograph of a storm. You keep describing the storm. You tell others about the storm. But if you would only lift your eyes, you would see that the storm has passed. Your pain was real, yes. Your heartbreak was valid. Your tears were sacred. But your spirit was always stronger than the wound. Do not let the wound become your name. You have been calling yourself by the names of your scars, but your true name is peace. Your true name is joy. Your true name is I am, not I was, not I broke, not they hurt me. Just I am. The past cannot survive in the light of full presence. Every time you step into the now, the chains fall away. Every time you choose gratitude, every time you choose stillness, every time you choose self-compassion, you are reminding yourself that this is who you are. Not the version of you who had to survive, but the version of you who now gets to thrive. The world around you may keep bringing up who you were, but you don't have to answer to that name. You can say, that was a chapter. I'm not erasing it, but I am no longer reading it. And when the mind tries to pull you back, because it will, you gently say, thank you for trying to protect me, but I am safe now. That story is over. I choose peace. You are not obligated to carry pain just because you once held it. You are not disloyal to your past by outgrowing it. You are not arrogant for choosing healing. You are brave. This world needs more souls who have dared to release the roles they were cast into and step into the freedom of presence, who have stopped introducing themselves by their wounds and started radiating their wisdom instead. The ones who no longer bleed on people who didn't cut them. The ones who turned their hurt into insight, their sorrow into depth, and their history into higher ground. You are one of those souls. You don't have to wait another moment to begin, not after the next book, not after the next apology, not after the next therapy session or healing ritual. You can begin right here by saying, I am not my story. I am the soul who observed it, who lived it, who learned from it, and who now releases it. The ego may resist. It may say, but who am I without my pain? And that is the question. That is the threshold. Because once you remove the story, what remains is truth. And truth is simple. Truth is love. Truth is breath. Truth is that you are already whole, already divine, already worthy, not because of what you've endured, but because of who you've always been beneath it all. Now breathe. Let it go. Let yourself risen not as a reaction to your past, but as a response to your soul's invitation to be free. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become. And right now, in this moment, you can choose peace. You can choose to stop using the past as your identity. You can choose to come home to yourself. You can choose now, and now, and now again, because this moment, this eternal now is where your true life lives. And the past will let go of you the moment you let go of it. What would your life feel like if you woke up tomorrow with no memory of who you used to be? Not in the sense of forgetting, but in the sense of no longer carrying the emotional weight of it. What if all that remained was this moment and the fullness of being present with it? Can you imagine the lightness in your chest, the stillness in your thoughts, the soft freedom of not having to explain your pain anymore? So much of human suffering is not in the moment, it's in the remembering. And not just the remembering, but the identifying with what is remembered. A wound is not just a scar, it becomes a name tag. A mistake becomes a sentence. A betrayal becomes a worldview. You begin to see life not as it is, but as you were hurt. But the divine does not see you through the eyes of your history. The divine sees you through the eyes of your essence. It knows only the truth of who you are underneath the layers you've gathered to protect yourself. It sees the eternal flame that flickers even in your darkest hour. It whispers gently every time you're quiet enough to hear, "You are not your timeline. You are timeless." Let me say this again. You are timeless. You are not the events that happened to you. You are not the age at which they happened. You are not frozen in that year, that room, that night. You are the consciousness that passed through it all and still miraculously remained. And what a miracle that is. That despite the weight, you continued to move. That despite being misunderstood, you sought to understand. That despite being unloved in some moments, you never stopped yearning to love. That's not weakness. That's divinity remembering itself through you. So how do we stop using the past as our identity? We begin by watching our thoughts. Without judgment, just with awareness. Every time you say, "I always do this," pause. That's not your identity, that's a pattern. And patterns can be released. Every time you say, "People always leave me," stop. That's not your truth, that's a wound speaking. And wounds can be healed. Every time you say, "I'm just the kind of person who," listen to how your words are casting a spell over your life. What you affirm becomes your reality. And if you keep affirming your pain, you will keep living inside it. Instead, begin speaking from the present truth of who you are becoming, not the ghost of who you were. Say, "I am learning to stay. I am remembering that I am loved. I am discovering that I am enough. I am shedding the skin of who I was told to be. I am here now, free." This is not about spiritual bypassing. It's not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it be the script that writes the rest of your life. There is a difference between acknowledging the wound and identifying as the wound. One brings wisdom, the other breeds imprisonment. What if, instead of repeating the narrative, you honored the lesson? What if, instead of saying, "I was abandoned," you said, "I was taught to find wholeness within"? What if, instead of saying, "I was betrayed," you said, "I was shown where not to place my trust so I could learn to trust myself"? The meaning you give to your past is the power it has over your present. You get to redefine the story not by changing what happened, but by changing what you believe it means about you. The caterpillar does not mourn the skin it shed. It does not grieve its days of crawling. It simply surrenders to the transformation. It allows the becoming. And that becoming means releasing everything that no longer serves its wings. You too are here to fly. You too are in the chrysalis of evolution. And your past, as painful as it was never meant to be your cage. It was meant to be your cocoon. Every wound held the seed of awakening. Every heartbreak cracked you open just wide enough for light to pour in. Every silence you endured trained you to hear your own voice with clarity. You do not become who you are in spite of your past. You become who you are because you chose not to be limited by it. But you must choose again and again and again. Because the mind will try to pull you back. The ego will whisper, "Don't forget what they did. Don't trust. Don't change." Because change means ego death. And the ego would rather wear the crown of pain than risk the vulnerability of rebirth. But you are not your ego. You are the vast, infinite awareness beneath the ego. The sky, not the clouds. The ocean, not the waves. The stillness beneath the noise. When you stop identifying with the past, you begin to live from that space of stillness. And from there, every moment becomes new. Every encounter becomes sacred. Every breath becomes a doorway to the now. There is no one moment of healing. Healing is a way of being. It is the decision to show up again and again, not as the wounded self, but as the witnessing self. Not as the victim, but as the soul. And when I say soul, I mean that eternal, changeless, luminous core of you that has never been touched by trauma, that part of you that remains untouched by time, that part of you that looks through your eyes and says, I have always been here. That part of you is where the power is. And you access that part by being still, by listening, by letting go of the need to explain yourself to others, by dropping the need to be understood, because the soul is not interested in being understood, it is only interested in being aligned. Alignment is peace, alignment is presence. Alignment is saying, I don't need to hold this pain anymore just to prove it existed. Because it did. It existed, and you survived it. Now it's time to stop surviving and begin living. It's time to stop rehearsing the story and start writing a new one. It's time to take off the mask of the past and reveal the face of your true being, radiant, calm, eternal. You do not need to convince anyone of your worth. You only need to remember it. You do not need to fix yourself. You only need to remove what was never truly you to begin with. All that shame, that's not yours. All that fear, that was learned. All that guilt, that was inherited. Let it fall. Let it drop like dead leaves in autumn. You don't have to explain why you're changing. You just have to be willing to change. You are not abandoning your past by evolving. You are honoring it by growing beyond it. The past is a chapter, not a prophecy. A footprint, not a prison. A teacher, not your name. So stand now in your fullness, in your truth, in the blazing light of your now. Feel the presence of life not as something happening to you, but as something moving through you. The past cannot enter here. The present is too powerful, too alive, too spacious. And the more you practice presence, the less room there is for old stories. The more you practice forgiveness, the lighter you become. The more you practice compassion, the less you cling. And the more you remember who you truly are, the more the illusion of the past begins to dissolve into the light. There is a space inside you that has never been wounded. A space where no betrayal can enter, no memory can stain, no fear can grow. That space is the silent witness behind all experience. And it's from that space that you are invited now to begin again, not as someone escaping the past, but as someone no longer chained to it. Imagine just for a moment that your entire life was a great stage play. Every person who hurt you, every moment of loss, every heartbreak, they were actors in your soul's theater, playing their part not to defeat you, but to awaken you. What if your suffering was never punishment, but invitation? What if it all existed not to keep you down, but to bring you to this precise threshold where you finally say, I remember now, I am not the character, I am the consciousness behind it. You do not have to keep performing the same role just because you've memorized the lines. You can walk off the stage, you can take off the costume, you can bow in gratitude for the role that taught you strength, and then walk into the next act of your life, unburdened, open, whole. But to do that, you must do something radical in a world addicted to suffering. You must give yourself permission to be free. You must stop waiting for the world to release you. It won't. The people who hurt you may never admit they did. The past will never suddenly rewrite itself. The healing is not going to come from out there. It will come the moment you decide, I no longer identify with this version of myself. That's not forgetting, that's not pretending, that's reclaiming, that's awakening. That's stepping into the truth that your spirit is not a victim of time, it is a creator of it. And creation begins in this present moment. When you say, I am not my past, you are not erasing your story, you are simply shifting your authorship. You are saying, yes, that chapter shaped me, but it no longer defines me. And that is the moment everything changes. That is the moment you begin to write again with the ink of possibility rather than the blood of repetition. Let yourself change. The past may resist. Your ego may grieve. The people around you may question who you are becoming. That's okay. That's expected. When a snake sheds its skin, it doesn't explain itself to the old scales it left behind. It simply grows silently, surely, naturally. The soul is not interested in your history, it's interested in your liberation. And liberation does not come through control, through analysis, through endless digging for why. It comes through surrender, through stillness, through finally allowing yourself to be more than what hurts you. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as simple as not reacting the way you used to, as simple as choosing peace when chaos knocks, as simple as smiling when you once would have shut down. This is what the past cannot touch: your present awareness, your capacity to choose again, your ability to love anyway, to rise anyway, to forgive anyway. Forgiveness, you see, is not just a gift to others sit, is the final key you hold that unlocks the prison of your own pain. It says, I refuse to keep dragging this weight into every room I walk into. I refuse to bring old storms into new days. When you forgive, you are not saying what happened was right. You are saying, my freedom matters more than my resentment. Because resentment is heavy. Bitterness is heavy. Anger is heavy. And you were never meant to carry so much weight. There is a lightness in letting go. There is a purity in saying, I am no longer the person who needs this story to feel worthy. You are worthy without it. Worthy without the suffering. Worthy without the label. Worthy without the justification. Let me say this clearly and lovingly. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't have to keep your pain just to prove how deep it ran. You don't have to relive your trauma just to feel valid. You don't have to stay broken just because someone once told you that was your name. You can rise quietly, gracefully, fully. You can be reborn not into someone new, but into who you've always been beneath the wounds. This is your spiritual inheritance. This is your birthright. This is the divine remembering itself through you. And yes, it takes courage. Yes, it takes stillness. Yes, it takes truth. But everything your soul longs for exists on the other side of identity, on the other side of the story. The moment you say, I choose peace instead, you realign with the essence of life itself. Because life is not interested in your resume of pain, it's interested in your ability to be here, right now, alive, awake, aware. Every morning, when you open your eyes, you are being born again. The world may be the same, but you are not. Every breath is a doorway back to now. Every heartbeat is a reminder that your essence has never been defined by circumstance. You are not what happened to you. You are what you are becoming in this very moment. You are a soul in motion, a spirit in evolution, a being of light wrapped in human form. And you are allowed to outgrow everything that once kept you small. You are allowed to stop telling the story. You are allowed to just be, to walk into a room without needing to explain your pain, to sit in silence without needing to be understood, to laugh again without guilt, to dance again without fear, to love again without protection. Because the truest healing is not in becoming someone new, it's in finally remembering who you were before the world told you to be something else. That version of you, the one beneath the stories, that is the you who is whole. That is the you who was never lost, only covered by the dust of memory. So close your eyes for a moment, breathe. And in that breath, hear the still whisper that says, you are safe now. You are whole now. You are free now. Let it echo. Let it settle into your bones. Let it replace the noise that once screamed your name in pain. Because you are no longer what happened. You are the healing that followed. You are no longer the story. You are the space it unfolded within. You are no longer the victim. You are the vast, unshakable witness. And the witness does not cling. The witness simply is. So breathe again. Smile gently. And remember, the past is a place you visited, It is not where you live. So now, take a breath, a deep, conscious breath, the kind that isn't for survival, but for remembrance. Let it move through you like a wave of light. Let it whisper to every cell in your being, you are no longer what happened. You are what you choose to be now. You see, healing doesn't mean the past vanishes. It means you no longer carry it as your name. You no longer offer it to the world as your introduction. You no longer give it the power to determine what comes next. Because what comes next is yours. Entirely. Clean. Unwritten. Not predicted by yesterday, but shaped by your presence today. And maybe that's the greatest spiritual act of all. Not climbing a mountain, not reading another book, not waiting for a thunderbolt from heaven. Maybe it's just sitting quietly and saying to yourself, I do not need to be the person my pain made me. I can be the person my soul has always known me to be. Let the silence, after that truth, be your sanctuary. Let it wash over you. Let it sink in, because no matter how heavy your story has been, no matter how far back it stretches, no matter how many pages were written without your consent, the pen is in your hand now. And with it, you can write something new, not in reaction to your past, but in service to your peace. You can wake up tomorrow and no longer recite the old roles. You can meet the mirror with gentleness, not judgment. You can walk into your relationships not as the person who was wounded, but as the person who has learned to love from wholeness. You can live unburdened. And I say this not as philosophy, not as metaphor, but as deep, sacred truth. You are not your past. You never were. You are not the identity built from pain. You are not the roles you were given when you couldn't defend yourself. You are not the mask you wore to feel accepted. You are not the weight you carried to feel real. You are light. You are awareness. You are love. You are the presence that watched it all and now chooses to let it go. You are the divine wrapped in skin. And the past has served its purpose. It brought you to this threshold. It broke you just enough so that something deeper could open. It challenged you just enough so that surrender became possible. It bruised you just enough so that you'd stop running from stillness and start listening to your soul. So now, thank it. Yes, thank it. Not for what it did, but for what it revealed. Not for the pain, but for the clarity that followed. Not for the suffering, but for the seed of awakening that suffering contained. And once you've thanked it, bless it, then let it go. No need to carry what no longer helps you fly. No need to wear the old name when your spirit has outgrown it. No need to live life looking backwards when your heart only beats in one direction forward. This is the moment, right now, this breath, this stillness, this quiet miracle of being. Let it be enough. Let it be home. Because when you no longer use the past as your identity, something extraordinary happens. You remember who you've always been. And that remembrance is freedom. You were never meant to carry the world on your shoulders. You were never asked by life to grip so tightly, to brace against every tide, to fight the river as it flowed, all in the name of survival. Somewhere along the path, you were taught that control was strength, that struggle was noble, and that surrender meant giving up. But today, I invite you to awaken to a deeper truth that real strength begins the moment you release your need to control everything. Surrender is not a white flag waving in the wind. It is not weakness clothed in spiritual language. Surrender is the opening of the soul's hands, unclenching from illusion, and finally allowing what already is. It is the courage to stop arguing with reality. It is the power of stepping aside so the universe can step in. Look at nature. The ocean does not resist the moon. The tree does not strive to make the seasons change. The sun does not apologize for shining. They each exist in effortless cooperation with something greater. not passively, not indifferently, but in a sacred surrender to the divine intelligence that breathes all things into being. What if your life was never about conquering, but about remembering how to align? What if your power wasn't in force, but in flow? We've been conditioned to believe that surrender is synonymous with failure, that letting go means we've lost. But the ego only knows two settings: control or collapse. It cannot comprehend the grace that lives in the middle. The soul, however, knows a different language. It knows that surrender is the portal. It is the hinge that opens the door to peace, to wisdom, to healing. When you stop trying to fix the moment, you begin to feel it. And when you feel it without resistance, you start to be transformed by it. You were not born to suffer beneath the weight of your own expectations. You were born to fly freely in the sky of trust. And yet, so many walk through life armored in tension, constantly fighting what is, fighting their past, their parents, their partners, their pain. They wear spiritual armor, trying to protect themselves from life, all while missing it. But freedom does not come from resistance. Freedom comes from meeting life as it is, raw, unfiltered, uncertain, but always sacred. Surrender is not the end of your power, it's the beginning of your real power. The power that doesn't dominate, but liberates. The power that doesn't control, but creates. It is the power that arises when you no longer believe you have to be the source of everything. There is a force in this universe that spins the planets, grows the flowers, and whispers to the caterpillar when it's time to become a butterfly. This same force lives in you, but it cannot work through clenched fists and closed hearts. It moves when you move aside. It heals when you release your grip. The irony is you never had control to begin with. The idea that you did was the illusion. You cannot control people. You cannot control time. You cannot control outcomes. You can only control your willingness to surrender into love, into presence, into peace. And peace doesn't come when everything is resolved. Peace comes when you resolve to stop resisting what is. Surrender is not about passive submission. It's about active trust. It's not about giving up. It's about giving over. Giving your worries back to the universe. Giving your attachment to outcomes back to God. Giving your burdens to something larger, wiser, more loving than your fearful mind. The great spiritual teachers all spoke this truth. Jesus said, "Not my will, but thine be done." Lao Tzu taught that yielding overcomes the hard. Rumi whispered, "Try to be like a tree, let the dead leaves drop." These weren't invitations to give up, they were calls to wake up. Wake up from the illusion of control and step into the mystery of grace. The ego hates surrender because it fears death. But the soul loves surrender because it knows that's where rebirth happens. Imagine standing in the middle of a great river, trying to hold back the current. You push, you strain, you shout, and still the river moves on. You exhaust yourself trying to dam the infinite. Until one day you realize, what if the river is not your enemy? What if it's your deliverance? So you let go. And in that sacred release, you are carried not away from yourself, but back home to yourself, to the you that is already whole, to the you that has always been enough, to the you that never needed to force what was already unfolding. Surrender is how the wound becomes the womb. It's how endings become openings. It's how breakdown becomes breakthrough. It is not an act of collapse, but of cooperation with what is holy. When you stop clinging to your pain can begin to heal. When you stop needing people to be different, you start to see them through the eyes of compassion. When you stop demanding that life match your script, you begin to read the script. Life has been lovingly handing you all along. To surrender is to see with new eyes. You begin to realize that the things you thought were problems were really invitations, that the detours were actually directions, that the closed doors were actually protection. Surrender gives you the clarity to see that life has always been happening for you, not to you. This doesn't mean you abandon your dreams. It means you stop worshiping your preferences. You stop believing that your happiness depends on the outcome. You start dancing with life rather than dragging it behind you. The surrendered soul still dreams, but they let go of how it must happen. They still desire, but they trust in divine timing. They still act, but without the desperation of the ego's agenda. They live in harmony, not in fear. And here is the paradox of surrender. The more you let go, the more you receive. The more you release control, the more peace flows in. The more you stop striving, the more grace arrives. Because grace is not earned, it is allowed. It is not a reward, it is a river that's always flowing. But you cannot feel its flow while you are clutching to the rocks of resistance. You must let go. And in that letting go, you will not fall, you will float. You are not here to suffer under the illusion of control. You are here to remember the truth, that there's a rhythm to this universe, and your soul already knows the dance. You only need to surrender to the music. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that love is a better master than fear. Let your heart break open. Let your plans dissolve if they must. Let the healing begin where the holding stops. There is nothing more courageous than a soul who chooses surrender, not because they've given up, but because they've woken up. You cannot force the flower to bloom. You can only create the conditions for blooming and then let it happen in its own divine time. So it is with your joy, your purpose, your healing. You prepare your heart and then you let go. You stop pushing the river and you allow yourself to be carried. You are not the one holding the stars in place, nor do you cause the tides to roll in and out. And yet, isn't it strange how often we try to control the rhythm of life as if the entire universe hinges on our will? But control is a false security. It is the prison we construct when trust feels too vulnerable. And the bars are made of expectations, hard, sharp, unyielding. Every moment we cling to should, must, can't, or never, we're reinforcing a world built not on presence, but on fear. Yet the soul lives on trust. Not a blind, naive trust, but a deep, intuitive knowing that life is intelligent, that the same force that turns an acorn into an oak knows how to turn your pain into wisdom. When you surrender, you are not falling behind. You are catching up with your destiny. You are stepping out of the storm of the mind and into the calm of your being. You are saying, I trust the path, even when I cannot see the next step. That is not weakness, that is power. That is not foolishness, that is faith. Have you ever noticed the most beautiful moments of your life came unplanned? The laughter you didn't expect, the connection that arrived like a gift, the healing that happened not when you tried, but when you stopped trying. The universe has a rhythm, and it does not follow the clock on your wall or the calendar on your phone. It beats in stillness. It speaks in silence. It moves in its own mysterious, divine timing. And surrender is how you sync with it. The ego will always offer you ultimatums, fight or fail, control or collapse. But there is a third way, the way of surrender. It is the way of the Tao, the path of least resistance. It is not passive. It is participatory. You are not abandoning life. You are cooperating with it. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to show me? Because everything that enters your life comes bearing a message, not as punishment, not as cruelty, but as invitation. Every heartbreak is an invitation to open wider. Every delay is an invitation to trust deeper. Every loss is an invitation to love what remains. And when you stop trying to manage the message, you can begin to receive it. Do not underestimate the strength it takes to surrender. It takes courage to stop swimming upstream. It takes boldness to trust what you cannot see. But in that surrender, your energy returns. Your peace returns. And you begin to discover you were never meant to figure it all out. You were meant to remember that you are not alone in this. There is a current to this life, and it knows exactly where you're meant to go. So many people spend their lives chasing outcomes, running, fixing, striving, reaching, all in the name of some distant peace that always seems just beyond the next accomplishment. But peace is not something you earn, it is something you allow. It is not a goal. It is the natural state that arises when you no longer resist this moment. You stop seeking, you start seeing, you stop controlling, you start receiving, you stop forcing, you start flowing, and you realize that surrender isn't something you do once, it's something you practice every day. Every morning you rise and say, I release what I cannot control. I trust what I cannot see. I allow what wants to come through me. That is not passivity. That is the most powerful declaration of alignment you can make. You don't need to bend life to your will. You only need to align your will with life. This shift from control to cooperation is where everything begins to change. Not necessarily on the outside, but on the inside. The battles in your mind begin to quiet. The arguments you keep having with reality start to dissolve. The tension that sits behind your eyes, in your neck, in your chest begins to soften. And in that softness, you begin to remember who you really are. Not the stressed mind, not the desperate planner, not the hardened identity. You are the spacious awareness beneath all that. You are the stillness that watches it all come and go. You are the open sky, not the weather passing through it. And surrender is how the sky remembers itself. When you stop identifying with the storm no longer defines you. When you stop believing every fearful thought, those thoughts lose their grip. When you stop resisting the waves, you begin to surf. And isn't that the art of life? Not drowning in the waves, not stopping the waves, but learning to surf the divine ocean of change with grace, humor, and trust. The ego fears change. The soul knows that change is the only way truth reveals itself. So stop bracing for impact, start leaning into flow. If your plans are falling apart, it's because something better is coming together. If your path is unclear, it's because you're being invited to trust. If everything you once clung to is slipping away, it's because you're being asked to hold something higher, something eternal, something unshakable. And what is more unshakable than a soul at peace? That kind of peace cannot be faked. It cannot be found in possessions and status and achievements. It only arrives when you finally stop trying to manipulate your way into a perfect life and instead welcome the perfectly imperfect life you already have. Because that life, messy, raw, sacred, and unfolding, is the only place where grace can meet you. The moment you stop needing things to change in order to be okay, you've entered the realm of true power. The moment you release your grip on how things should be, you become available for how beautifully they can be. The moment you surrender, you are no longer living in resistance. You are living in resonance. That is the difference between effort and ease, between anxiety and awareness, between exhaustion and embodiment. This is not about sitting still and doing nothing. This is about sitting still and doing the inner work of releasing your attachment to control. Then and only then do you rise to act from clarity, not fear. From love, not lack. From wisdom, not worry. You move not because you're afraid to fall behind, but because your soul is moved to act. This is the paradox of surrender. It does not stop your motion. It sanctifies it. You begin to live from inspiration rather than desperation. You become a vessel rather than a victim. You flow with divine energy rather than fighting it. And that is what it means to live as a spiritual being, having a human experience. You remember that you are not the doer of all things. You are the expression of something greater. You are the melody, not the musician. The light, not the lamp. Surrender is the art of remembering. I don't have to carry this alone. The mind will scream, but what if it doesn't work out? And the heart, in its soft strength, will whisper back, what if it works out better than I imagined? Surrender is learning to trust the whisper more than the scream. It is choosing the still voice within over the noisy voice without. It is the sacred shift from fear to faith, from demanding life conform to your timeline to allowing life to unfold in divine time. Surrender is not the end of desire. It is the purification of it. It is not that you no longer wish, dream, or move, but that you do so without clutching. You do so with open hands and a soft gaze. You plant seeds, not because you're desperate for harvest, but because you're honoring the natural rhythm of creation. You water, you wait, you trust, and even if nothing sprouts in the way you expected, you trust that the earth is still working, that something is shifting below the surface. That growth doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it's a quiet stretch in the dark, a subtle rearrangement of roots, an invisible awakening. The ego cannot comprehend this kind of subtle power, but the soul was made for it. The soul is not impatient. The soul knows that real transformation often happens in the spaces between, in the pauses, in the surrender. When you stop doing, pushing, demanding, and instead fall into being, that's where the alchemy begins. Do you remember what it felt like to rest without guilt? To trust without proof? To breathe without bracing? Surrender is the return to that original state, the one you knew as a child, before the world taught you fear, control, and conditional worth. It is the sacred coming home to the you that is not tangled in outcomes. The you that knows you are loved, not because of what you do, but because of who you are, who you've always been. Not the performer, not the fixer, not the one holding all the pieces together, but the soul, the still point, the light behind the thoughts. And in that remembering, healing becomes possible. Not because you fought your way there, but because you stopped blocking the healing that was trying to reach you. Everything you're looking for already wants to reach you, but it cannot pass through the gates of fear. You must unlock the door with surrender. Surrender your timeline. Surrender your need for validation. Surrender your tight grip on what healing should look like. And instead, listen, let the silence teach you. Let the grief soften you. Let the stillness rebuild you. There is a wisdom that arrives only in the absence of effort, a kind of divine intelligence that you do not create but commune with. It cannot be summoned. It can only be received. And surrender is the posture of receiving. You bow inward, not in defeat, but in reverence. You say, I don't know how this will unfold, but I trust that I am being led. You say, I release my story of suffering, and I welcome the miracle in its place. You say, I am not afraid to let go, because what is truly mine will never require force to remain. That is the voice of the awakened one. That is the language of surrender. It is in this surrender that you become available to the present, because only in this moment, not the one you're imagining, not the one you're trying to fix, but this one is where love lives, is where healing breathes, is where miracles wait patiently for you to finally notice them. We miss the sacred so often, not because it isn't there, but because we are too busy controlling what's next to feel what's here. You were not designed to bear the burden of every outcome. You were not wired to micromanage the cosmos. That's not your job, that's God's. Your job is to be a willing vessel, a clear conduit, an open window for light, and light can't pass through when the blinds of fear are drawn shut. You must open, you must allow. And when you do, when you surrender your need to know, to control, to manipulate, the universe begins to move through you. Ideas arise, synchronicities unfold, people appear, doors open, but not because you forced it, because you became available to the rhythm of your soul. And what is your soul's rhythm? It is ease, it is grace, it is peace, it is love. It is the quiet knowing that you are not behind, not broken, not late, but right on time, right on path, right where you need to be. There is no place to get to, only a presence to return to. And surrender is that return. The mind may resist this. It has been trained to believe that pressure creates progress, that the tighter you grip, the more you'll control. But pressure is not presence, and gripping only creates more fear. Let go. Let the leaves fall. Let the river run. Let the mystery remain a mystery, and learn to enjoy the ride instead of fearing it. You do not need to have it all figured out. You only need to be aligned with your truth. And your truth is never rooted in fear. It is rooted in love. It is rooted in trust. It is rooted in the wisdom that says, even if I don't know where I'm going, I trust the one who guides me. This is the path of surrender. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it, because it will give you something the world cannot. Peace without proof, joy without condition, freedom without permission. And that, beloved, is power. You see, the art of surrender is not about erasing your will. It's about aligning your will with something higher. It's about learning to listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Because when you're fully present, when you're not lost in the anxious rehearsal of tomorrow or the painful replay of yesterday, something miraculous begins to occur. You start to hear the voice of your own soul. And your soul is always guiding you toward peace. But peace doesn't come from getting everything right. Peace is the byproduct of remembering that you were never wrong to begin with, that you've always been loved, that the real you, the one beneath the masks, beneath the fear, beneath the striving, has always been whole. Surrender doesn't make you less. It brings you back to the you that isn't built on conditions. The you that existed before the world told you who you had to be, before you learned to pretend, before you began bargaining for love through perfection, performance, or people-pleasing. Surrender returns you to your essence. And your essence was never separate from God. This is the mystical truth that so many miss in their quest to succeed, to heal, to transform, that you are not some broken thing that needs to be endlessly fixed. You are already divine, already worthy, already connected. The only thing in the way is your resistance to believing it. And that resistance, that constant inner battle, is what surrender seeks to dissolve. It is not a giving up of who you are. It is a letting go of who you are not. You are not your past. You are not your failures. You are not your regrets, your roles, or your wounds. You are not your name. You are not your story. You are the one who is aware of all of those things, yet untouched by any of them. The witness, the presence, the eternal one, behind the ever-changing forms. And when you live from this place, this surrendered awareness, life begins to mirror back to you a kind of grace that you once thought only belonged to saints or sages. You realize you don't need to chase miracles. Your very presence becomes a miracle. Because what is more miraculous than a human being who has laid down their weapons, the weapon of judgment, the weapon of fear, the weapon of shame, and chosen to walk with open hands and an open heart? What is more radiant than a person who trusts life deeply even when it's unclear? This kind of trust is not blind, it is not naive, it is born of intimacy. Intimacy with the self, with spirit, with the patterns that unfold when we stop interfering and start participating. There's a rhythm to grace, and when you surrender, you move with that rhythm, not against it. You speak with less urgency and more clarity. You love with less attachment and more freedom. You live with less fear and more awe. And awe is the natural result of surrender. Because the more you release the illusion of control, the more space there is for wonder, the more room there is for mystery. And the more mystery you allow, the more you begin to recognize that you are not alone in this, that something is moving through you, guiding, shaping, orchestrating. That something does not speak in demands. It speaks in whispers. And you must be still to hear it. Stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is receptivity. It is the spiritual posture of surrender. And in that posture, you don't lose your power, you magnify it. because true power has nothing to prove. It does not dominate, it does not strive, it does not fear the unknown. True power rests in trust. It walks gently, it acts clearly, it speaks only when needed. And sometimes true power is silent, not because it has nothing to say, but because it knows that presence says more than words ever could. Let yourself be present. Let yourself be emptied. Let yourself become a vessel again. There's a sacred spaciousness that opens when you surrender your agenda and allow life to surprise you. You start to see with new eyes. You begin to experience every moment not as something to be controlled, but as something to be cherished. Even the difficult ones, even the painful ones, because you come to realize that every moment is part of the curriculum. Every detour is part of the path. Every loss is a hidden invitation to return to love. And love, not fear, is the ground of your being. When you surrender, you return to that ground. You let life soften you. You let it stretch you. You let it strip away everything that is not essential, not true, not real, until all that remains is what cannot be lost. And what cannot be lost is what you are. You are not the one drowning. You are the ocean itself. You are not the one falling. You are the sky that holds the fall. You are not the one struggling. You are the silence beneath the struggle, watching, waiting, loving, always. This remembrance is the fruit of surrender. And like all true spiritual fruits, it cannot be rushed. It ripens in its own time. So be patient with your process. Be gentle with your becoming. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are being refined. And surrender is the fire that purifies, not by burning you down, but by burning away what you are not. What's left is gold. What's left is truth. What's left is peace, not because everything makes sense, but because you've made peace with not needing it to. That is power. And it was never about winning. It was about awakening. The awakened heart no longer needs to control the waves. It learns to move with them. It learns to bow to the rhythm of life, not in fear, but in reverence, not in resignation, but in freedom. When you surrender, you do not disappear, you finally appear, because everything you were pretending to be falls away. And the real you, the eternal you, the radiant, divine spark that has never been stained by trauma, shame, or fear, steps forward. That is the power of surrender. You are not diminished by letting go. You are revealed. You are not weakened by yielding. You are liberated. You are not erased. You are remembered. And so breathe now, deeply. Breathe like someone who no longer has to figure it all out. Breathe like someone who belongs to something sacred. Breathe like someone who trusts the tide to carry what needs to be carried and trusts the shore to receive what is meant to remain. Let the armor fall. Let the story unravel. Let the old identity dissolve into silence. You are not here to maintain the facade. You are here to wake up from it. Surrender is not defeat. Surrender is the sacred choice to stop worshiping fear. It is the decision to stop playing small. It is the moment you say, I will no longer grip what wants to go. I will no longer chase what is not mine. I will no longer demand that life rearrange itself for my comfort. I will instead rearrange myself for truth. That is power. The kind of power that doesn't need to shout. The kind of power that doesn't fear change. The kind of power that walks into the unknown with steady eyes and a steady heart, because it knows that even in the dark, you are never alone. You have always been carried. Even in the silence, you are being guided. Even in the waiting, you were being reshaped. Even in the loss, you were being prepared for more than you knew. And now you remember. You remember what it means to surrender, not because you're broken, but because you're brave enough to stop pretending you were ever in control. You are no longer afraid to kneel at the altar of this moment, no longer afraid to let the past go where it belongs behind you, no longer afraid to trust what you cannot yet see, because the invisible has always been the most real. Surrender is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your return to presence, to simplicity, to stillness, to love, to the part of you that doesn't need to impress, to win, to prove only to be. And what could be more powerful than that? To be here, to be aware, to be open, to be free. That is the path of surrender. It is the way of the mystic, the way of the healer, the way of the heart. It is the way of those who no longer wish to live by force, but by faith. So walk gently now. You don't need to fix the future, just feel the now. You don't need to explain your journey, just embody your truth. You don't need to hold the whole world together, just return to the wholeness that is holding you. Right here, right now, everything is unfolding. Everything is being rearranged in your favor. And your only task is this: to let go of what was never yours and trust what has always been. The love, the presence, the breath, the peace, that is the gift. That is the offering. That is your power. Surrender to it and become it.